On April 6th, are you going to party like it's 1999? I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is John Clark, President and CEO of Master Clock Incorporated. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Tony.
So, what does Master Clock do, and how is the global positioning system involved in your work?
So, Master Clock is a manufacturer and supplier of very accurate timing devices and systems. And so, what we do is the timing signals you can get from the GPS satellites are very, very accurate and globally available. So, there's a tendency for a lot of these systems to rely on GPS as their primary source of time. So, as you have geographically dispersed locations, you know the time and frequency is consistent between them. And so, we deploy a lot of GPS based systems that are providing timing signals to a variety of types of equipment related from critical infrastructure to broadcast facilities to back-end school networks. So the technology is pretty ubiquitous across the globe, and there's a lot of applications using it for time and frequency accuracy.
A few seconds before midnight GMT on Saturday, April 6th this year, GPS will experience an event many have called the Y2K of GPS. Explain what will happen with devices and what we might see if we're relying on them at the moment.
So what's interesting is that when they implemented the GPS system, they basically defined the time and date function with a 10-bit number. And what happens is the reason it's similar to Y2K is just like the computers when they were 98, 99, 00, you didn't have the additional contextual digits to let you know that there was a rollover to a new era or epoch, as they call it. So within the satellites, because of the way they were designed, they're limited to 1,024 weeks before they'll roll over. And just like when it goes 9900, there's no context to say that it's a new millennium or a new epoch. And so it rolls back to the original date. And so the system itself is going to have that rollover on April 6th. What's interesting, though, is that that period really starts, for instance, in our case, it starts from what we call a pivot date in the firmware. And so the pivot date, the system time that we use as the basis of our calculations when we're figuring out exactly what time it is in our systems, our dates are actually after April 6th. And so none of our equipment should be affected on the rollover date. They will be affected at future dates depending on where we set that pivot point in our code.
According to the U.S. Energy Department, the nation's power grid relies on timestamps embedded in GPS. Should I make sure my phone and flashlights are fully charged before I go to bed, or is this one of those future date kind of situations?
You should always have a fully charged flashlight and backup phone anyway, so it's probably good practice. But there could be some effect from legacy systems. If you've had a system that's been in a long time, a lot of those manufacturers aren't even around anymore. So we've been replacing a lot of systems for folks that can't go in and update their firmware and extend the lifespan of these. So it's kind of like with Y2K. There was a bunch of people prepping for it. It wasn't quite as catastrophic as they thought. I know our customers at least are protected. We've got some legacy systems from 15 years ago that we can no longer update, but we've been actively working with those customers to make sure that we can get them a modern system that's going to work. So there's I'm not going to worry about not flying on that day or anything like that. But preparation and awareness is key. In our case, we had some previous systems that had failed in February of 2016 because we had previously set a different pivot point during the last epoch. And you can definitely get some effects. You'll have all sorts of time-related things that can happen, whether it's a radar system or a process automation plant. We've had the experience. We can work through it. We think most of the manufacturers are being proactive. So like I said, we're aware of it, but there's enough professionals working on it that I'm still going to fly and still going to expect to charge my cell phone.
Is there a way to tell in advance if my devices have already been updated, or is there something I need to do as a consumer?
So what we did is we went out and bought GPS simulation devices, and we spent a lot of money, got professional grade ones. And you can test and basically set your device to a future date on April 6th and see how it's going to do on that rollover. However, it's professional equipment. It may not be good for the consumerist, the hobbyist, or the average user. So I would just get in touch with the manufacturer. They should know, they should be on top of this and aware of it. And they should be able to advise you on their ability to try to mitigate it or what they should think you should do.
What about businesses especially, but what kind of precautions, if any, do you recommend that businesses and maybe families even take to prepare for the rollover?
At the family level, I mean, most of these systems that I think are going to be impacted are more kind of upstream. The other thing to remember is the frequency won't be impacted, and navigation won't be impacted because of the way those are calculated. So it's just the timestamp data that will be off. So, for instance, if you've got a server that's acting as a master clock for your network and is providing time signals to all these client computers, when all of a sudden that date jumps back 19.7 years, the time is still correct, but those clients see that it's outside of their constraint of what times they should accept, and they shut down and don't accept the time. So there is a limited set of applications. Your average navigation application won't be affected. People who just use a pulse per second coming out of the satellites won't be affected. So there's still a limited, room of engagement for this issue, and it's. I don't think it'll affect the consumerists and the hobbyists or the average person as much, I guess, as some of the business world, which I guess those effects slow down to affect the consumers anyway. Um, but I think it'll be better than people think.
All right. Well, thanks for that. John Clark, President and CEO of Master Clock. If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe they want to find out more about this event, how can they do that?
Just visit our website at masterclock.com. We've been doing a lot of research. We've got some great resources on there. And if you have questions about your devices in general, we've got some engineers much smarter than me that would love to help you out. So just reach out to us, masterclock.com. We do one thing, which is time. So we're pretty aware of what's going on, and we'd love to help you out.
All right. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic. Thanks for watching.